True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been, and am. Well, why won't you say that I'm mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing, acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth, and I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man, and he had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, I think it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture. Pale blue eye with a film over it, and whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. So by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, thus rid myself of the eye forever. This is the point. You fancy me mad, and madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, and with what caution, with what foresight I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. Every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door, opened it so gently. And then when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, put in a dark lantern, all closed so that no light shone out. And I thrust my head in. You would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. Would a madman have been so wise as this? I undid the lantern cautiously, for the hinges of the door did creak. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture's eye. But I found the eye was always closed, so it was impossible to do the work. It was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in the opening of the door. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph to think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds of thoughts. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle. now? Have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the senses? Now I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum. But even yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I fairly chuckled at the idea. Perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now, you may think I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch. I resolved to open a very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily until at length, a single dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot from the crevice, full upon the vulture. It was open, wide open, and I could not see the old man's face or person, for I directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. Many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length, it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head, and the arms, and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber, and deposited all between the scaffoldings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. A suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and the officers had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chattered of familiar things. But before long, I felt myself getting pale. I wished them gone. My head ached. I fancied a ringing in my ears. They still sat, they still chatted, and the ringing became more distinct. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. Steadily increase. Why would they not be gone? But the noise steadily increased. Louder! Almighty God, no! They heard, they suspected, they knew! They were making a mockery of my horror! I felt that I must scream or die. Louder, louder, louder. Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here. It is the beating of his hideous heart.